Good morning students. In this class I am going to discuss with you about Psilotum. Classification, division Psilophyta, class Psilotopsida, order Psilotales, family Psilotaceae, genus Psilotum, example Psilotum flaccidum. Distribution. Psilotum commonly called as the whisk plant. Psilotum comprises of two species in it like Psilotum nudum and Psilotum flaccidum. Psilotum nudum is also called as Psilotum triquatrum is predominantly a terrestrial species. Psilotum flaccidum, that is also called as the Psilotum campanillatum, is commonly an epiphytic species. The structure of the sporophyte. The sporophytic plant body is simple herbaceous in case of the Psilotum. It is rootless and leafless in nature. The sporophyte consists of two parts in it, that is underground rhizome and aerial shoot. This is the only one pteridophyte which is rootless and leafless in nature. The structure of the sporophyte is simple, herbaceous in nature. It is rootless and leafless. The sporophyte consists of two parts, that is underground rhizome and the aerial shoot. As seen in the pictorial, you can observe the underground rhizome as well as the aerial shoot. Let us move in detail about the rhizome. Rhizome is underground structure. It is brownish in color. It is irregularly branched. This rhizome bears the scales and rhizoids on it. Rhizome is the underground structure which is brownish in color and it is irregularly branched. This rhizome bears on it the scales and rhizoids. Let us move towards the aerial shoot of the sporophyte. That is, aerial shoot is green in color and it exhibits dichotomous branching. The sporophyte may be erect or pendant in condition. In Psilotum triquatum, the aerial shoot is triangular in condition. The aerial shoot towards the upper region bears the appendages known as the bifid foliar appendages. In the axils of these appendages, spore producing structures are present called as the synangium. Aerial shoot is usually green in color and it exhibits dichotomous branching. The sporophyte of the Psilotum exhibit either erect condition or pendant in nature. In one species by name Psilotum triquatum, the shoot is triangular in nature. The aerial shoot towards the upper region, it bears a leafy appendage which is bifid in condition called as the bifid foliar appendages. Foliar refers to leaf, bifid means split. So it is bifid foliar appendages. In the axils of this appendages, it bears the spore producing structure. Here the spore producing structure in Psilotum is called as the synangium. Let us move towards the anatomical characteristics of the aerial stem. In the beginning, we discussed the morphological characteristics of the sporophytic plant body of Psilotum. That is, it comprises of two parts, that is the rhizome and the aerial shoot. Let us move towards the anatomical characteristics of the aerial stem. Aerial stem is having three layers. One is the epidermis, cortex and the stela region. Starts with the epidermis. It is the outermost uniseriate protective layer which is externally surrounded by the cuticle. It is the discontinuous layer due to the presence of the stomata. This is about the epidermis. Epidermis is the uniseriate parenchymatous layer which is the protective layer because it is the outermost layer and it is externally covered by the cuticle because it is exposed aerially, so it is externally covered by the cuticle and it is discontinuous layer due to the presence of stomata. Let us move towards the cortex. Here the cortex is differentiated into three regions, that is outer cortex, middle cortex and the inner cortex. Outer cortex is made up of chlorenchyma cell, hence it helps in photosynthesis. Middle cortex is made up of sclerenchyma cell, therefore it helps in mechanical support. Inner cortex is made up of parenchyma cell, it helps in storage. The cortex in case of the aerial shoot is differentiated into three regions: outer cortex, middle cortex and the inner cortex. Outer cortex is made up of the chlorenchyma cell which helps in photosynthesis. Middle cortex is made up of the sclerenchyma cell which helps in mechanical support. Inner cortex is made up of parenchyma cell which helps in storage. The next region followed by the cortex is the endodermis. It is made up of uniseriate layer of parenchyma cell. This region differentiates between the cortex and the stellar region. The next region is the stellar region. It is the central vascular cylinder which consists of pericycle, vascular tissues. Pith may be present or absent in nature. Let us move towards the pericycle. It is the outermost layer of the stele and it is the uniseriate layer. Inner to the pericycle, the vascular tissues are present. In case of the aerial shoot, xylem is star-shaped structure which is externally covered by the phloem. This type of stele is called as the actinostele. If you observe the stem at the basal region, it exhibits the pith also. Here the pith is sclerenchymatous pith, that is called as the sclerotic pith. This diagrammatic representation shows the TS of aerial shoot. That is, there are three regions. One is the epidermis, cortex and the stele. Epidermis is the parenchymatous uniseriate layer which is externally covered by the cuticle and it is a discontinuous layer due to the presence of stomata. The next region is the cortex which is differentiated into three regions: outer cortex, middle cortex and the inner cortex. Outer cortex is made up of chlorenchyma cells that helps in photosynthesis. Middle cortex is made up of sclerenchyma cell which gives the mechanical support. Inner cortex is made up of parenchyma cells which helps in storage. The next region is endodermis which is parenchymatous continuous layer which differentiate the cortex and stellar region. Stele comprises of pericycle, vascular tissues, pith in it. Pericycle is the uniseriate layer of parenchyma cell and it is the outermost layer of the stellar region. And in next to region is the vascular tissues. Vascular tissues, here the xylem is star shaped in nature which is externally covered by the phloem. And at the center pith is present which is sclerenchymatous pith. Let us move towards the next part of the sporophyte, that is the rhizome. If you take the anatomy of rhizome, it comprises of three regions, that is the epidermis, cortex and stele. It is similar to that of the aerial shoot. Epidermis is the uniseriate outermost continuous protective layer which is externally covered by the cuticle. Cortex. Outer cortex is made up of parenchyma cells which are interrupted with mycorrhizal hyphae. Middle cortex is made up of parenchyma cell which are rich with starch grains. Inner cortex is made up of parenchyma cell which is rich with flavofin, that is nothing but the tannin. Epidermis is the outermost layer and it is the continuous layer because of the absence of stomata here, but it is externally covered by the cuticle. What about the cortex means? Here the cortex is differentiated into three regions: outer cortex, middle cortex and the inner cortex. Outer cortex, middle cortex, inner cortex are homogeneous masses of parenchyma cell, but the outer cortex is interrupted by the mycorrhizal hyphae. Middle cortex is rich with the starch grains. Inner cortex is rich with the tannin component, that is the flavofin. So that we differentiate the cortex into three regions. The next region is the endodermis. It is the uniseriate layer which is present in between the cortex and the stellar region. The next region is the stele. Stele comprises of three. One is the pericycle, vascular tissues. In case of the rhizome, pith is absent. Pericycle, it is the outermost layer of the stele and it is uniseriate layer. Here the vascular tissues, xylem is externally covered by the phloem, pith is absent. Such condition of stele is called as the haplostelic condition which is present in case of the rhizome. About the endodermis, it is the uniseriate layer and it is the region which differentiate the cortex and stellar region. Stele is the central vascular tissue, vascular cylinder which comprises of pericycle, vascular tissues in it. Here the pith is absent. Pericycle, it is the outermost layer of the stele and it is uniseriate layer. Vascular tissues, xylem is externally covered by phloem and here pith is absent. Such condition is called as the haplostelic condition. This diagram shows the characteristics features of TS of rhizome. Epidermis is the outermost uniceriate layer which is externally covered by cuticle, and it is a continuous layer. Cortex is differentiated into three regions: outer cortex, middle cortex and inner cortex. Outer cortex is interrupted by the fungal hyphae, and the middle cortex is rich with starch grains, and inner cortex is rich with the phlobophene which is a tannin, inner to which the endodermis is present, which is the uniceriate continuous layer, and it is the layer differentiate the cortex and the stele. Pericycle, this is the uniceriate layer of parenchyma cell, and it is the outermost layer of the stele. At the center, the vascular tissues are present. That is, xylem is surrounded by externally by phloem. The pith is absent. Then such condition is called as the haplostelic condition. This is about the anatomical characteristics of rhizome. Thank you.